Do you have silent agreements in your closest relationships? Do you have unspoken rules? Do you have not discussed expectations? That can make things very challenging, and that's what we're talking about today. Leave your 5-star review so this gets out to other people, and if you want more information, see me at livebrighterwithtara.info. Today we're talking about those unspoken rules, those silent agreements, and expectations. When I was in a destructive relationship for 22 years, there was a lot of unspoken rules and silent agreements and expectations that weren't communicated. That made things like walking on eggshells. It didn't feel good. But if I go back even farther and look at how I grew up and what I was raised with, there were even unspoken rules and silent agreements at that time too. So it's really interesting to just see how these kind of permeate into our own relationships. And thankfully, we have choices and we can actually change that. Because I'll tell you, not knowing what people are expecting of you, having these silent agreements but not really clear can be really aggravating. It can be just not honest with who you are and with where they're at. So it can cause lots of problems. The contrast of that is spoken rules and written agreements, relationship plan, and all those sorts of things. So we're going to talk about that. So for me, this has been a unique time in my life because I've been married almost a year. And it's been a it's actually a year on Sunday, super excited. It's actually been a long distance marriage because my husband's son was graduating high school and going off to the Navy, and we chose to support that versus being in the same place. Thankfully, it was only an hour and 15-minute flight, so my flight bill has drastically gone down, and I can work remotely and he could work remotely, so we would be able to do that, so spend at least 10 days out of the month together. But this is our first time of actually living in the same house, and so it's really a great opportunity. The big difference, it's always interesting to contrast a destructive relationship that I was in before to what I'm in now. And this is not to say everyone in a destructive relationship is going to get a divorce and da-da-da-da, because we can change the dance in our own relationships if the person is willing to do that with us. And so there's definitely a lot of opportunity with that. But in my case, that didn't work. And I have a wonderful relationship with my husband now, Michael. And we're going through some changes. A big thing, though, as we are together, we have in the same place, in the same house, we are working through, relational challenges and roommate challenges because, just living together and sharing the same space has its own challenges too. And it's been fabulous because we already have a really good, solid relationship plan because we both came from, relationships where there was a lot of silent expectations, a lot of passive aggressive resentment. In his case, it was very verbally aggressive. And in my case, it was very much I was ignored if I misbehaved, which I seem to misbehave all the time because I was ignored a lot. So in this time, as we've come together and we've been very intentional about our relationship, we created a relationship plan. And those are, I could call it relationship rules because I'm not like triggered by the word rule. But if you're triggered by the word rule, scrap that and just have a relationship plan and have it written. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about our relationship plan. The first thing before you can have a relationship plan is you have to know what's important to you, and you have to know that what's important to you is important. I was talking with my husband this morning, and we had to laugh because my thoughts and feelings in my previous relationship with my husband, is what I call him, my thoughts and feelings were kind of irrelevant to the relationship and were not encouraged. And the cool thing is, we highly encourage our differences and our expression in our relationship because that's what we really think is healthy. And we've had to do a lot of work on ourselves before we could get to that place. So the first thing is really knowing what's important to you because we're all different. And it's fabulous that we're all different. We're all created very differently, very uniquely, in the image of God, but we're vastly different and highly different. So of course there's going to be conflict. And I've really worked hard to change my idea of conflict as being like, oh my goodness, it's conflict, because it was such a kind of a naughty word in my previous relationship where conflict really wasn't allowed. And if I tried to bring things up, I would be ignored, and then conflict was never resolved. So conflict really had some bad undertones and some bad connotations that just scared me. And now I've realized that conflict is normal and it's natural and it's really can be neutral. And it's really how we work through it in order to either bring us closer and or to bring division. Another thing Michael and I always joke about, and you'll see this in our relationship rules, is we say if something is bothering us more than 2 days, we have to talk about it. And we do this because, we don't want to go to counseling in 5 years and say, and bring up that thing 5 years ago, and we just think that they were doing it, and we just assume this, and we're super pissed about it, and I'm not okay with it. And it was something like 5 years in the past. So we really try to keep our conflict and everything quite current, because most conflict, like I always say, 90% of conflict is misunderstandings. And so just having the opportunity to resolve that in something that is respectful and healthy and actually brings us closer is amazing. And a lot of that comes from our relationship rules and our relationship plan. So I keep these on my phone. So I'm actually, and this is something we decided together and is very individual to us. So, like the first one, you'll see a lot has to do with freedom. And you'll see, both Michael and I come from, where there's a lot of control. And so freedom is something that's super important to us. So the first one, and this isn't an order of importance, this is just in, what we have down. So is freedom to talk about anything on our minds without judgment, freedom to express with an open mind. So there's no silent agreements that you can't talk about this issue or you can't talk about that issue without something going to happen. They're going to blow up or something. You're going to be ignored. So we've really tried to not have any topics or conversations that we can't talk about. So that's the first one, freedom to talk with anything on our minds. And the second one is freedom to express our needs. That was a big deal, like really understanding that I actually have needs that are more than food, clothing, and shelter. And for example, something that I've realized I need is Michael travels a lot. And so we have coffee every morning at 5:30 a.m. wherever he's at. And we have, talk. But if it's not like a deep connecting talk, after about 3 days, I start to feel a little distance from him. So I kind of tell him, I'm like, I need to know the good, the bad, the ugly, and just a little bit of what's going on internally for me to feel intimate with him. And he is similar, and he totally understands that that's important to me, and we really do that. But really, and then he has different needs too that are different than my needs. And so really understanding that that's okay. We are different, and yes, it is our responsibility first to meet our own needs. We're in a relationship and we can help each other out, and there are certain relationship needs that are vital for our marriage. So the next one we have is freedom to ask the other person questions or clarification. Like I said, 90% of conflict is misunderstandings. And I don't know if it was just me, but I really had a fear of being like, well, could you clarify like what you said, because I took that this way? Because that for me was kind of probably because I had a horrible lack of boundaries before and wasn't able to express myself. That was challenging. And so just being able to say, hey, could I just get some clarification on this? Or there's a phone call and I overheard that and it just sounded a little odd. Could you just clarify that? I mean, that was a very difficult thing for me to acknowledge that that's important to me and for us to talk about, and we do that for each other. And so that goes both ways. And then another thing is when we get together, we need to prioritize first time together, whether it be a date night, but do something intentional. I feel like it's very easy to kind of get into the flow and get into the rhythm and not prioritize doing something, just for us, whether it be a walk together, but very intentionally focusing on each other. It's time to change the way you see yourself from God's perspective. Click the link below to get free affirmations and printable affirmations to support you in your Live Brighter journey. This one is a big one. This is number 5. Assume the other has good intentions and loves me. So that is huge. So going into a challenge or conflict, if I assume that the other person loves me and has good intentions, it is so much easier to resolve and talk about conflict or, issues. It's just amazing. Another one is we prioritize that God is first in our lives. We are second. Like it is our job to help ourselves, like emotionally, physically, spiritually. That is our responsibility. And then third is our family, each other, and then work. And so really just having the same way we look at life and our priorities. Another one is give each other grace as we give ourselves grace. So for both Michael and I think we're pretty good at giving each other grace. I think sometimes, and we've both had to work on this, is giving ourselves grace. Like, okay, we've screwed up, we made a mistake. And rather than, internally shaming or feeling bad about it, just being like, make amends or whatever we need to do, but really give ourselves grace to screw up, freedom to screw up, and just be okay with that. So that's something that, we have to strive for. We have to be intentional. This is something, when pressured, the other can say, that doesn't work for me. So we kind of have adopted some key words to let the other person know, hey, they're pushing a little too hard and they're like, like that doesn't work for me. So that was one of our key words. Another thing, when we're being vulnerable, is to let the other person know, like, hey, I am being vulnerable. Because it's kind of easy to be vulnerable and like, oh, that was so hard to do. But the other person doesn't know. And so they probably don't handle it as, carefully as they should. But if you go into it and say, hey, I just want to share something with you, and this is me being vulnerable, then it's kind of keyword to be like, okay, let's be really sensitive about that. But people can't read our minds. So we've decided that we need to express that, hey, this is me being vulnerable. And then, like I talked about before, and I have it down, this is our biggie. If there's anything bothering us after 2 days, we have to bring it up with each other. And we've really held to that. That is a challenge because there's ways, like, I think a lot of times I would self sabotage or justify it. It's like, oh, I'm being too sensitive or I'm doing this and it shouldn't be bothering me this much. But actually, just having a conversation and being like, I feel like I am kind of being too sensitive and I just would really like to talk about this. One thing I don't do is I don't talk when I'm super angry. And that's because of just where I'm at. I don't think well when I'm super angry. I don't, I have a harder time being intentional because it's not like, when I say we express things to others, it's not flippantly. It's not like, and I feel da 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 da. I really have to, I think about things before I say it because I do want to protect, not in an unhealthy way, but be mindful of the other person in the conversation. And when I'm super angry, I'm not mindful of anyone. So usually at that point, I go to my barf notebook, and that's something we've talked about a lot, where I just barf out my feelings, I sort it out, and then I plan it out, and I figure out, okay, I do need to talk to someone, or I just need to forgive, or I need to figure out what was triggered in me and kind of go a little deeper into that, or how I need to go forward. So that's just something good to know, that I'm just not like I'm not barfing my feelings and emotions all over my husband all the time. Um, we do daily reminders of just, I love you, I choose you. Like, we both feel like sometimes love can be, I don't know, we're not really, I think for us, like, I choose you and choosing each other every day because love is a choice. And I just am grateful that we can choose to love each other and that we've committed to that. And another thing, because I think this is can be more for men depending on our raisings, but I see this more in men. If emotions are overstimulated or full, then we can say, I need time out or time to myself. And that's because I don't think if our emotions are going wild and we're like, oh, dude, I just want to react, that's a great time to deal with challenges. So it's just kind of like a tapping out, a temporary tapping out. It's like, I need a little time to myself. I need a little time to process. That's not like a rejection, and it's not anything else, and it's a plan to get back together again after they have the amount of time. And it's not like weeks or even days, but at least a few hours or whatever they need in order to process and not be overstimulated emotionally, because it's very challenging to have great conversations when you're overstimulated emotionally and you either want to eat the person or yell or do something that isn't very productive or healthy. So those are some of our part of our relationship plan. And as we go about our relationship, we add things. We have things on finances in here, and I didn't get into all of our things, but it's very individual. But the big difference is we don't have any unspoken rules. We don't have any silent agreements. We don't have any expectations that aren't like verbalized, because that can be super stressful. It's not healthy. And so we've really tried to work on this and to create a solid foundation, and not just a foundation on sand that is sifting and changing all the time, because that's really challenging. So whether you're in a relationship, I say, do you have those unspoken rules? Do you have those silent agreements? Do you have those unmet expectations or unspoken expectations that you want to think about and actually discuss with your partner? Then that is fabulous. If you're not in a relationship, it's kind of like figuring out what's important to you and really knowing yourself to know, like, these, if I am in a relationship, or if I, because not everybody wants to be in a relationship, but wherever you're at, to just be intentional about, these are my needs. And again, it's wonderful that we as adults can really focus on meeting those, ourselves for the most part. And then I always feel like, my husband and I, we're the cupcake in our relationship. Ourselves are the cupcake, and our relationship is the frosting. So I have everything that I need, all the ingredients to be a nice whole cupcake all myself. And then we're just like, our relationship is the fluff and the frosting, and just makes it better. But it's not a need. And so that's really helpful for our relationship. It takes the pressure off. And then just trusting that, each person can be responsible for their emotional and physical well-being and verbalize what they need. One thing that both Michael and I have learned that we need is time to ourselves, whether we're together. And so I literally verbalize, I'm like, hey, I'm going to just take 2 hours to myself, and I'll be in the same house, but it's like 2 hours. I can put my earbuds in, I can do my own thing, but I just have to, like, kind of cut him out completely. As a sensitive person, I can feel emotions, and I'm very aware of people around me. And it's just like, I just need to cut all that out and focus on myself, and not be, interrupted, or focus on whatever I'm focusing on. And I just let him know, so that he's like aware, like, oh, she's just having time to herself. He doesn't take it personally. And he asked for the same thing, and I don't take it personally, whether he needs to go for a drive or just have some time alone reading a book. But he'll let me know. It's like, I'm taking time to myself. And we see that as a healthy thing that both of us need. So that's what we have today. So you can actually know yourself when you're not in a relationship. You can work on these when you're in a relationship. And this is something that we can grow 1% every day. And that's what we're all doing together. I believe in you. Make it a great day.